All right, so today we are going to talk about ACL tears, ACL tear prevention, and what to expect with rehab. We also have Tyler, who has torn his ACL before, that is going to discuss his rehab and how it affected him. So today we have me, I'm Jess, a physical therapist at Maple City PT, Brett, another physical therapist, Matt, our athletic trainer, and then Tyler, another physical therapist. So each one of us will introduce ourselves when it's our turn, and we're going to start with Matt with prevention, exercises, and some ACL tear statistics.
Yeah, I'm Matt. I'm the athletic trainer. I work primarily with Cornell High School, and then I also work with Canisteo and Andover. So I'm going to talk a little bit about prevention. I think it's a underrated or underutilized thing in terms of ACL prevention and just general knee health. So the basics of any real ACL prevention program is strength, flexibility, agility, and balance. At least that's how I break it down. And so I'll break down each of those a little bit so you guys understand like what each of those entail. So for strength, power and strength is very important, but it's also about control and eccentric motion. And eccentric motion is the lengthening while a muscle is contracting, basically. And that really is important when you're talking about preventing injuries. It's your body's ability to slow down in a controlled fashion. And if that happens too fast, there's failures. And that happens a lot in non-contact ACL injuries. So just focusing on your strength and focusing on your eccentric strength is very important. Now to flexibility, initially you might not think it's important, just stretching and blah, blah, blah. But it's important to have like good hip mobility, good knee mobility, good ankle mobility, so you don't have as low end range of motion, because when you have those low end range of motions, it's easier to go past that and cause more failures. So making sure you stay flexible and keep your mobility adequate so you don't cause more injury unnecessarily. In terms of agility, agility is just the ability to react to an outside stress. So you can think like football drills where like the balls are being thrown at like the combine athletes and they have to catch them and react to it while it's happening. And that's really important. That kind of thing is really important with prevention, because it's your ability to react to the stress on the field. If somebody's trying to slide tackle you, you have to be able to realize that and react. Or if you're kicking the ball and you have that plant foot, you don't want to pivot in the wrong way. You have to be able to react to the stressors. And balance, it kind of goes along with agility, and it altogether builds your proprioception. Now, proprioception is just the body's knowledge of itself in space. So knowing what your own body is doing and like how it controls itself is huge to preventing any injury, especially a knee or an ACL injury. So keeping your balance up and keeping, doing balancing activities so that way you can react just like agility to the stresses on the field or, just in daily life. So with the program we implemented in Andover, the PET program, it was by the Santa Monica Institute. It focuses on basically those four main bullet points. And it focuses more on, the prevention prior instead of just fixing it after the fact and after you've already had a failure, because at that point you've already gone past it. Now you're playing catch up. So if you have the ability to prevent that, or at least reduce your incidences of it, or putting yourselves in those situations, it's huge. And when it comes to ACL injuries, there's two ways you could say that you could injure it. There's non-contact, which is the vast majority of ACL injuries, and that's about 70% of ACL tears are non-contact. And that's something like getting your foot caught and twisting. A lot of the twisting and loading is a huge mechanism for the injury of an ACL. And generally, that happens more in sports that are less contact. So in the football, you're going to see more of maybe a higher incidence of contact ones, and those are going to be tougher to prevent, just because you don't always know what's going to happen. So that's why it's also important to keep your agility up. And when it comes to the differences between sex, women are 10 times more likely um, to tear just because of their biological disadvantages, because of their wide hips and acute angle, which is the angle of your hips to your knees, basically. And there's multiple other things like hormones that actually affect it too. So it's really important, especially for a young athletic woman, and it to do a preventative program and to keep up with their strength, flexibility, agility, and balance, because they are so much more likely they're 10 times more likely to have an injury to their ACL than a guy. That's not being said that a guy shouldn't be doing these programs, and we implemented those programs with the men's teams and Andover also, um, and so it's just as important. But it's you want to go both ways. So yeah. So Brett.
All right. Thanks, Matt. So I'm Brett. I'm a physical therapist at Maple City Physical Therapy. I do specialize in the treatment of athletes. So I have seen quite a few ACL injuries and post-surgical care throughout the few years I've been working here. I'd say the biggest thing to expect, you've had this ACL injury, this ACL tear, you've undergone an MRI, things like that. Is it's going to be a long road. It's going to be a long process of recovery. So the first thing we would say is you're going to start, depending on your surgeon, what your injury looks like. It's possible that you're going to start with prehab. So you could come to therapy before you have surgery. So coming in before surgery, we can work on getting full range of motion back. The stronger you are going in, the better the outcome. And there is even some healing that can take place after the injury, before surgery. We have had someone with a meniscus tear along with their ACL, and that meniscus tear went on to actually heal because it was in an area that had blood supply. The meniscus tear healed with some prehab physical therapy. So after the surgery, I think Jess is going to go into specifics with the surgeries and things like that. But after surgery, it's going to be a long road. You're expecting about 6 months of physical therapy. You're going to have to come in consistently, anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week. Come into physical therapy with us. The first few weeks, you're really just going to focus on getting your range of motion back. You want full flexion of your knee, so you want your knee to be able to bend as far as the other one. But some of the biggest predictors of a successful outcome is how straight your knee gets. So you're going to have to spend a lot of time in the clinic with us, as well as at home the first few weeks after surgery, just putting in a ton of time stretching that leg, because, the straighter it gets, the more it bends, the more successful your outcome. As you progress through, you'll start to add in some more strength training, balance training, things like that. Usually around 3 months or so, you can start doing some running, progressing back into jumping, sport-specific activities. Your return to sport's going to fall somewhere between 6 and 9 months, depending on your injury, the sport you have to get back to, and what your surgeon decides. And like I'd say the biggest thing is just realizing it's going to be a long road. A lot of the ACL reconstructions I've worked with, I know it can be hard to stay motivated that entire time. But you just really got to put in the time and the effort consistently. At 6 months, it's going to seem like forever probably. And it's going to be a pain and annoyance to do everything on a daily basis. But that 6 months is not only going to determine kind of how fast you get back to sports, how good you feel, or how good you are when you get back to sports. And even if sports might not be a thing, maybe you're a senior athlete, you're not going to play at the next level, that 6 months after surgery can really help determine how your knee is going to function and feel the rest of your life. So just be prepared for a long road, but know that it is very, very important to do what the surgeon tells you, do what we tell you, and keep after it. And it can take, 6 to 9 months of rehab, but it's really, they found up to 1 to 2 years of strength training. So when you're done with therapy and you go into your sport, don't think you can just quit doing everything. You're going to have to continue with some strength training, some agility training, things like that for up to 1 to 2 years before your knee really gets back to where it was before. So that's all I have for you. I think Jessica is going to come on next.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more on the specifics of surgery and rehab and things along those lines. So after your tear, like Brett said, you may have prehab, you might go right in for surgery. The big piece is it's important to research your surgeon. So do they do an autograft, which is a graft from your hamstring or patellar tendon, or are they going to do an allograft, which is a cadaver graft or a donation or donor ACL? Those have different outcomes. Different doctors do different things. So the protocol also comes from the doctor. So we don't set up let me rephrase it. We get a protocol. So in this set of time, you can do these exercises, and then this set of time, we can do these exercises. So we watch, make sure the exercises are going okay, and then we advance as the protocol allows. So that's mainly set up from the doctor. Touchdown or weight bearing is different between protocols and between injuries. So if you have a meniscus tear, which didn't heal with prehab, or you didn't have prehab, it's typically 6 weeks non-weight bearing, and then you go into weight bearing, toe touchdown weight bearing, 50%, things along those lines. Usually after just an ACL repair, it is about 2 weeks of working on weight bearing with the brace locked out, and then changing the brace depending on the protocol. Talking about the brace, the doctor is also in charge of the brace. It can either be in the protocol, or we call the surgeon multiple times throughout the plan to see what they want us to do with the brace. Do we lock it at 90 degrees of flexion in these so many weeks, things along those lines. And then the reason that we don't do running, jogging, or high level plyometrics is the word I'm looking for, within the first 12 weeks is because from week 1 to 8, the ACL is revascularizing, or it's getting the blood flow, and then 8 to 12 is when it fixates or connects in. So those are very critical times in the ACL repair plan, and that's why you're so limited for so long, just to keep that ACL safe. At around 12 weeks, that's when we can add in gentle hopping, things along those lines, and then we progress to sports-like activity. As Brett said, though, even most protocols run from day after surgery to 24 weeks, and we work on range of motion, strength, things along those lines. It doesn't stop at that 24 weeks. So the doctor releases you for sport, but you're still nervous. You have to stay. You can work out in the gym, or we have a gym you can come into and then ask us questions as long as you're a member, or work out with your coach, and make sure you're keeping your hips, knees, ankles, everything strong. Core is a huge piece of it too. Not just stopping it at 6 months, as Brett said. I think that is about what I have for my stuff. And then Tyler's going to tell his story of his tears.
So I'm Tyler, and I also work at Maple City Physical Therapy as a PT, and I do have treated a lot of kids and athletes with ACL tears myself. But for me, I had torn my ACL 3 times in high school. I had played basketball and tore it all 3 times during basketball. My first tear was what's called a terrible triad, where the ACL, the MCL, and the medial meniscus are all torn at the same time. And that one was a little bit more complicated than the other surgeries and rehabs. In my first surgery, I was home from school for about a week, and I was very out of it for the first week going back to school. Fortunately, I had the support of my friends to help me get to and from classes. Had to be non-weight bearing, using crutches, wearing the knee immobilizer. I had to keep the knee immobilizer on for about 6 weeks like Jess had mentioned, about 6 weeks or so is where you can start bearing some weight. And I think that was about the time where I was able to bear weight as tolerated. But a lot has changed in 10 years as far as the protocol goes. And I had rehab, and I went for 6 months, and about 2 times a week, I think, 2 times a week for 6 months in all three settings. And I'll tell you that probably my experience was that I worked hard, definitely hard for the whole thing, but I would say that I probably went back to sports too early. 6 months for me. I mean, even though I tried to wean back into sports and not kind of the full, I played baseball in the spring, kind of when I went back, and I wouldn't consider that necessarily as difficult as contact as other sports. And definitely the biggest thing I think for me was the social and emotional impact on having the surgery, having the injury, not being able to be with my friends at school. Sports was my life for a long time, and I didn't really know what was was young in high school. I didn't really know what to fall back on, but I was so grateful to have physical therapy and my physical therapist a part of the rehab process with me, helped me kind of understand where to go and who I could definitely rely on them. So today I have some issues still. I have some stiffness with deep squatting and kneeling. I do have to keep wearing my athletic brace that I was fitted for any kind of recreational sports. I don't typically wear it for even surface running, but certainly that is something that could be done. I don't feel like my knee is unstable at all. I think that, I rehabbed it enough. But like Brett said before, that 1 to 2 years of strength training, I guarantee you I could have been, doing better, feeling better if I had continued to do that. And I know a lot has changed in 10 years, but I think if I would have went back, I would have rehabbed a little bit longer, a little bit harder, especially towards the end, the 5-6 month period where you can do plyometric activities and sort of that agility training that prepares you for sports. So I think that's very important to not neglect the end. Finish strong is what they tell you, right? So that is my story. I will conclude, and everyone can come back on.
So a big thing too, I'll say here quick to add off kind of what Tyler was saying as far as feeling kind of the psychological part of it being down and out is make sure you stay part of the team if you can. Go to the games, ride the bus, be part of the team, be part of what you love. Just because you can't play, don't let that shut you down. Stay after it. I mean, if you stay part of the team, if you stay out on the field, if you ride the bus with the team, if maybe even you go and you help coach a Kiwanis team or something because you can't play, so you do a youth sports coaching thing while you're out. Something to stay around the sports is huge, I think, for you guys recovering mentally too, because that's what you love. And although you can't play, just being around it, I think, can help with the whole process as well.
Yeah, another thing I forgot to say in my piece of it was don't compare yourself to somebody else's ACL repair. You're two different people. Who knows what graft you had? There's no, but when you're just talking to somebody, it's not apparent. So, and maybe somebody's 2 weeks ahead of you. Maybe they prehabbed, maybe they didn't. But one of the cool things I've seen with ACL repairs in our clinic, at least, is we have people from different schools coming in who were previously school rivals, and then they become friends and they talk about their journey together. And, and the other part is you're here with us so long that we develop relationships, not different with our ACLs, but we're with them a lot longer than a typical ankle sprain or things along those lines. So it's almost like for some of them, a forever friendship that the PTs get out of it as well. So it's definitely we can be one of your biggest fans and biggest supporters, and we are. And we love to go see you get back to sport as well. I know a lot of us have gotten together to go see senior nights or go to a game. So it's a forever. connection. And we appreciate you choosing us and trusting us with your care.
Just to finish up, it was not necessarily the be all end all. You tear your ACL, but it motivated me to become a physical therapist. So it's not the end of the road by any means. It's, you use it as a motivational piece for sure.
So if anyone has any questions about ACL repairs, ACL rehab, don't be afraid to reach out. You can reach out to us. You can call us at 324-9344, or you can Facebook message us, send us an email, anything along those lines, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have that we can answer.